Happy New Year! It's 2026, and I would like to begin the year by talking about comics. That's right, start as you mean to go on. Now, first of all, I need to apologize for my voice. I have woken up ill, not ideal, but it's already been too long since I posted a comic review, so I'm going to walk you through two comics I read recently. And for a change, they're neither Marvel nor DC. First of all, about a week ago, I read through Black Science Volume 1. That's right, not only did I pick up the Humble Image Comics in the Tens bundle, but I actually started reading it. Almost new year, almost new me. And I did consider reading through every volume of Black Science before talking about it, and I don't know if I'm going to commit to talking about each and every volume as I go through them. Let me know if that's something you would like. But I figured, I'm already doing a lot of long reads right now, which is why there's been so much space between comic reviews, so I might as well bundle these two reads together and talk about both of them. So yeah, first of all, Black Science Volume 1, How to Fall Forever. I went into this knowing pretty much nothing except that it was good. And I concur, it is very good. As a Doctor Who fan, can you tell by the subject of a second comic of this video, I really like Black Science. It's somewhat familiar in terms of, it's a science-based adventure through maybe not time and space, but alternate dimensions. But at the same time, it's different to Doctor Who. It's different in tone, it's less whimsical, it's more like, oh god, oh god, oh god. It is a little bit like the first Doctor's adventures in that their traveling machine, I guess, is broken and they don't know how to direct it, and so they keep ending up in these random locations and trying to survive while trying to find their way home. But unlike Doctor Who, there is a lot of swearing and death and blame associated and adult themes. Okay, to be fair, there's also a lot of death in Doctor Who, but you know what I mean. I also like that instead of taking us through time and space, it's taking us through alternate dimensions or like parallel realities, because you can do fun things like technologically advanced Native Americans invading like 1940s or 1910s maybe era like Germany. That's not necessarily a commentary on anything, I don't think, but it's very much like what if history had turned out differently, and I love that shit. I also like the lens through which this adventure or misadventure is told through this group of scientists and a few children just scrambling to try and survive, and they're very flawed people, like, some of them are plotting against each other. People don't necessarily make decisions for the betterment of the group, but instead for their own personal survival, and how does that shake out? It's really, really good. I've never read anything by Rick Remender before, but he's pretty good at what he does. I did decide to just read this sat at my PC using a program called C Display X, and I think I regret doing that because it wasn't really the best way to read a comic. The art was a little smaller than it could have been, and just in general, the experience wasn't necessarily so immersive. I wonder if I might have enjoyed this comic even more if I'd downloaded it to my iPad, and so I think that's what I'm going to do with Volume 2 for sure. It can just be a bit of a faff to download comics from Humble Bundle to my iPad and set them up in the comics viewer I've got over there, so I was like, I'm just going to sit here and read it. And yeah, it was quicker and easier, but also maybe not quite so fun. Now, when I show you comics, I like to show you how I read them, like from my perspective, and so this is what it looks like when I read a comic from my PC. As you can see, it's functional, it's fine, and I do like to have the double page spread open because this program doesn't really have any way of detecting when it's a double page spread, so I don't want to have to be like, oh wait, hang on a second, it's not 1, 2, 3, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of thing. But yeah, the art is really nice in this. I definitely would have appreciated it more, obviously, as I've already said, if I was reading it on like my iPad or something. And yeah, just reading it by like sitting at my PC. Obviously the text boxes are a little small, I was leaning in at points. Not the most ideal experience, will probably not repeat this. But yeah, those are my brief thoughts on Black Science Volume 1, but I also recently finished reading Doctor Who, The Eighth Doctor Adventures, I don't know if it's actually called that, A Matter of Life and Death by George Mann and Emma Vieceli. This is a mini-series published by Titan Comics in much the same vein as like the Ninth Doctor Adventures, the 10th, so on and so forth. And I figured this would be a good place to start my Doctor Who read-throughs. There's some earlier miniseries as well from earlier Doctors, but I feel like I want to be familiar with those Doctors before I go and read through those. There are miniseries for the 3rd, 4th, and 7th Doctors, respectively. And by the way, it's not important to read them in the order of the Doctors or anything, they all stand alone by themselves, but it's just something I thought I would do because I've got them all now via this bundle. And also, I'm always curious to learn more about the 8th Doctor, because I'm not a huge Big Finish listener. I've listened to some of his Big Finish adventures when they've been available for free in various places. In fact, there's a decent amount more that I could go and listen to for free, and I do plan on doing that someday. And I've never seen the actual Doctor Who movie where we first meet the 8th Doctor, and which was his only real, like, appearance within the quote-unquote show until The Night of the Doctor, which I have watched. But yeah, I've always been curious about the 8th Doctor. You know, he's the Doctor before my first Doctor, and what's the connective tissue there? And, well, we've learned in recent years there's not actually that much direct connective tissue there because the War Doctor exists, but you know, I've always liked what I've seen and heard of the 8th Doctor. And reading this book, I feel like the 8th Doctor either has a character arc through which he grows and changes and becomes different as he becomes older, or he has some inconsistent character writing. Because the 8th Doctor, as presented in this comic, is quite light and whimsical. He's quite Tennant-y without the PTSD, although don't get me wrong, he is undeniably his own Doctor. And I suppose that aligns with the general vibes of what I've seen of him in the movie, but I've also listened to an audio from the Further Adventures of Lucy Miller, and he seems a lot more like reserved and aloof. And I don't know if that's like an intentional character arc that I'm just missing out on, or if it's just inconsistent writing. If someone knows, please let me know, I'm curious. But yeah, sorry, to talk about the book itself, in this miniseries we do meet a new companion called Josie, and she's got a fun little story arc, and we go on a series of 5 adventures, and they are interesting adventures with interesting premises. I would say I enjoyed each and every one. My one criticism is that each adventure takes place within a single issue, which does lead to some pacing issues in my opinion. It's a little too quick. Not too long ago I did read through volume 1 of the 12th Doctor adventures, and I think that dedicated either 2 or 3 issues per adventure, and that felt just about right. And I would hope that other Doctor Who comic books follow that kind of storytelling structure, because it did feel like we were just arriving, figuring out what was going on, and then dealing with the situation and leaving just a little bit too quickly. But yeah, it was good, it was fun. I would recommend picking it up. I would just recommend reading maybe like 1 issue and then putting it down and walking away and doing something else and then coming back to the next issue later. I think reading them back to back kind of does them a disservice, because again, you will really feel like you are just rushing through these adventures. But the actual story content, no complaints. I should also mention I did quite enjoy the art. It was nothing crazy, but it was nice. The art in some of these Titan comics can be a bit hit or miss for me, so yeah, thumbs up on that front. Just to give you a quick idea of what the comic actually looks like, I really do like the colours as well by Hi-Fi here, they really pop. It's, again, like I said, it's quite light and whimsical feeling. You really get the colours popping off of the page here, and it all comes together quite nicely in my opinion, and the facial expressions as well, I would point out, are very well done. But yeah, just to give you a general update on what I'm reading at the minute, it is a little bit scatterbrained at the minute, it's a little all over the place, but I am continuing the Death and Return of Superman, that hefty tome. Also, I picked up the DC Compact comic of The New Frontier, which I would say, a quarter of the way through. I'm enjoying that very much. Also, on a whim last night, I decided to just start reading through some of the stuff I had downloaded to my iPad, so that's how I finished Doctor Who The 8th Doctor Adventures miniseries. It's also why I started Star Trek Year 4, which I guess I'll make a video about if people want to hear about it. I am quite enjoying it so far, and of course I am still making my way through the Bat catalogue, reading the occasional Silver Age Batman story from Neil Adams Volume 1, and consistently forgetting to return to it, because when it's an anthology series, I mean, it's not really an anthology series, so to say, but the stories are very individualistic, and when that happens, my brain just gets distracted by other things and forgets to return to something and keep reading it, because there's nothing really pulling me back. But I've talked about that before. This is my first time attempting like a kind of double mini review thing, so let me know what you thought about that as well. I hope you all have a wonderful new year. I look forward to making many more of these videos in 2026. Hopefully next time you hear from me, I will sound a little better. I will catch you in whatever I make next.